everybody. Thank you for joining us for another segment of Homegrown. And I am joined today by Mr. Vimal Patel, who is running for the 2nd Congressional District seat for U.S. Representatives. Vimal, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And, for people who are interested in knowing more about our area, tell them a little bit about who you are, what led you to pursue this candidacy.
Absolutely. So I'm Vimal Patel, originally from Troy, Alabama. I moved to Dothan when my wife got pregnant. Troy didn't have an OBGYN, so it was a difference between having to travel an hour or just moving to Dothan. We are in the hotel industry. We built some hotels back in the 90s and still run them and manage them today. I think the congressional seat has always been what I'm looking towards doing because that's really where the will of the people are represented. And I went to school at Auburn University with a political science degree. I came out, it was a difference between going to law school or coming straight into the business. And I think the business background is much more important when we talk about the congressional seat.
War Eagle, by the way.
War Eagle.
When it comes to, someone who may say, what gives you the support or the credibility to run for this office, what would you say?
Well, it's a great question. And we really have to figure out how we want to define credibility. So one thing I personally am not behind is I'm not behind career politicians. I don't like the idea of having to have made commitments a decade ago or 2 decades ago that you have to fulfill today. I'm not one of them. I have never ran for a political office besides 4th grade treasurer. I didn't win that one, so I really do want to win this one for vindication purposes. And so I would like to say that I have a big business background, and that business background, the success that stems from that is being able to build great teams. And I think that that's what we really need to push forward. Do we really want career politicians, or do we want somebody who can build a big team and have no promises 20 years ago they need to fulfill today?
So as far as our area is concerned, what are some things that maybe you see that can be improved upon to further grow the success that we're seeing in South Alabama?
That's really a great question. And to really reinforce that we are a very successful area, do you remember when we talked about going to Fort Rucker and how Fort Rucker invited us as young leaders to go out there? I think Fort Rucker is the heartbeat of the Wiregrass, and we really need to dedicate a lot of attention. And this congressional seat is the perfect way to do that, to make sure that impact Fort Rucker has continues to expand and not retract.
And I know you are also involved a lot with zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And now if I had one curious question, if you could make one single change to our zoning code, what would that be?
The planning and zoning department, they do a phenomenal job. I don't have a comparison so much as the businessman in me knows how each of these cities in our district works. And I will say that getting the inside look at how we do things here has been a real eye-opener. If there was one change that I think I would make, it would be more of an organic change to make sure that businesses always feel welcome, wanted, respected here in not just Dothan, but in our entire district.
And as you said, Fort Rucker is such a heartbeat of the Wiregrass. We get so many military from all over the country and all over the world even that come and go, moving in and out of our area, and are such an integral part of this big growth that we're seeing. Small business, when these servicemen and women are coming to the area, whether they're coming and still active duty, wanting to bring their families and be involved in businesses, invest in their community, or if they're veterans and retired and want to settle down and maybe open up a business. I know you as a business owner, you have that past experience and you have that knowledge. And I know that's something that you want to really champion is small business. And what can you say about that?
There's no way to go into a whole laundry list of what we can do to protect our small business. I mean, we have to start somewhere. I'm a small business guy, and I don't really feel like I'm protected on either side of the aisle. So when we win, one position we're gonna have within our office is kind of like a field director specifically dedicated to small business. There were certain programs, even during the pandemic, that a lot of my friends didn't even know about. The state awarded a grant to all businesses. A lot of my folks wouldn't have known about it. And Stephen, I think that it's very important to give credit to our Chamber of Commerce. Those guys do a phenomenal job at making sure we are aware about things that positively impact small business. I think one of the things we talked about is how healthy is our area. We should take a look at the Chamber of Commerce. They give you monthly break down statistics of new residential home sales, or when we talk about lodging sales, the increased percentages on there. Even through the pandemic, our numbers, they were very good considering the impact of the coronavirus.
And you're right, the Chamber of Commerce does an absolutely fabulous job at helping out members and small businesses throughout the community. This pandemic's totally thrown a challenge at so many people, and without everybody working together, you're right, there's a whole lot of things that people would have just missed out on and not known about without that support. Speaking about all of this growth that we do have going on, and speaking of grants that the government, may have been divvying out. Let's say whether it's a $1 million grant from the state, or if Jeff Bezos decides to shine his wand and get $1 billion or more. But if there was one grant that if Vimal Patel could put his stamp on and make happen, what would that be?
I've already started talking to some local leaders about this, but for us specifically here in Dothan, I floated kind of like an aesthetics committee. When you drive into the city, what is your impression of Dothan, whether you're coming from Panama City or you're coming from the north end? In respect to the grant question, what I would say has been my feedback in my head every time I've come through is we need to be better lit than we are. You'd be surprised at how much it would add up if we go around and make sure this city is lit up.
And I agree. And of course, that cost thing, you're right, it adds up very, very quickly when people start thinking of fabulous ideas, but in real world terms of paying for those things, you're right, it adds up quickly. With that said, you've got so many great towns throughout our area. So many small towns, small cities, Dothan included with its downtown. We all know that the downtown areas of any town, any small city, downtown is very, very important. And as we see communities grow, they expand outward. And we're still seeing a lot of outward expansion. How positive do you see that growth expanding outward? Or do you think really there should be much more attention focused on maybe cleaning up, developing from within?
I'm gonna say I want my cake and I want to eat it too on this question. I think there's really a good avenue to encourage and empower both areas when we talk about new construction, or we talk about development or moving out, and the attention to revitalizing downtown Dothan. Our leadership is unbelievable here. We actually have a board that's dedicated to this. I think I can say that the commission has a big hand in supporting this endeavor.
And one thing we've also spoke about is, again, we do have pockets of health care here throughout the Wiregrass that's really, really grown. So as that health care really grows though, we're still seeing so many people in a rural setting that may not have the transportation needed to get back and forth to those appointments, and there not being a complete dedicated public transportation source. What are your viewpoints on public transportation throughout our area?
When it comes to public transportation or infrastructure in general, we're definitely behind the curve. There's again no shortage of what we could do to do better in this regard. I think with the emergence of things like Uber Eats or takeout delivery, you now have infrastructures being put into place that are in the private sector, and I would love for us to find a way to utilize these services to help with things like this. I have veterans, older veterans, that all the time, they have the money. Money's not their issue. They just can't physically get to the grocery store. And I think to myself, well, why are we not enlisting the help of the drivers that are there sitting waiting in their car? They just don't know about this. They don't know how to go online and set up a little account or put it on their little phone that, hey, I want somebody to come pick me up, take me to Walmart, let me get my stuff and come back home.
Now, as far as engaging with your citizenry, what is your idea of involving your citizens and hearing their voice?
Any of your elected leaders should have a clear-cut time that their constituency knows that they're going to be in their office and that they want to hear from their constituency. I think that's really the real crux of the issue. A lot of folks are elected and then they get back to fundraising. That's what they're doing. They get back to doing something that's not really for the constituency. The reason I'm running is I just want to give everything I got towards meaningful education reform, championing small business, and making sure that our First and Second Amendment don't just become political footballs and we end up losing two key critical things that establish the sovereignty of our nation.
Well, Vimal, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your views on everything with us. Good luck on the campaign, and we wish you well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being involved in your community.
We definitely appreciate it, Stephen.
Absolutely.
Thank you.